If you look back to the start of the decade, you should remember a certain Korean horror thriller that was blowing up on Netflix at the time. Squid Game, a massive success in late 2021, was sending waves throughout online culture at the time. But Squid Game itself isn't really the focus of today's video. Instead, I'll be talking about one of the many IPs that hopped on the Squid Game hype train at the time. Crab Game, a free Steam game developed by the famous YouTuber Danny, and was released on October 29th, 2021, had initial massive success, reaching tens of thousands of players on Steam and continued updates for about 2 months until total radio silence from the developer. No new updates, no new announcements, no new videos. It seemed the creator really just wanted to put the game in the past already, despite its massive success. Dude hasn't even released a video since then, but I'm pretty sure he's been putting some time into something called Carlston. I think it's a new game. Anyways, with no updates and being permanently stuck in a Christmas theme due to the last update being a Christmas one, the game slowly bled its players before making a sudden rebound in 2023, falling off and somehow reaching new heights with a brand new all-time peak of 73,000 players in 2024. This happened at the start of July, the month this video is being produced. So with the introduction out of the way, this Crab Game really made a comeback, or is this a new number total bullshit? So if you already watched my video about this on H1Z1, you should already know how I do this, but before you call me lazy for repeating the same idea twice in a row, I had a whole TF2 video in the works before actually deleting 90% of my shit, so not my fault. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'll take the peak player count in a day and compare it with the lowest player count. And this will generally give me a good sense of a game's human activity. So the higher the highs and lows are, the better a game is looking. Right off the start, it isn't really looking good for Crab Game. It's certainly better than H1Z1's chart, but it's fucked up in its own right. First of all, we have a nearly flat line for most of the day, or an angular rise followed by a massive drop. Now, these can be up to 50,000 players at a time in a single hour, which is pretty big, and these are usually another telltale sign of bottom. So, either way, it's not really looking good for Crab Game here. These drops are either botnets going offline or server maintenance issues. But player numbers, while I thought they were looking promising initially, are kind of misleading because there is a good difference between peak time and low time players, but I still have reason to believe these numbers are botted. Seriously though, these drops in players aren't normal. They happen all at once, and they look more like something like controlled taking offline, more than people logging on and out like during a day. This is what a game with actual people would look like. What these stats do tell us though, is that there are probably a lot of people botting this game right now. It isn't like one organized group. These like drops make it look like they're fairly uncoordinated. Either way, all that really matters is most of these people aren't really real. And my best guess for the player count, at least at this point, is in the low thousands. But that's really just because when these massive drops like happen the most, that's where it ends up. But that's also just like a fucking shot in the dark here. So, not too much to say on this front this time around. This game definitely isn't dead by any means. You can find a server at any time with people in it, and there seem to be a fair amount of people worldwide playing this game. While it's very expensive at first, scrolling through the server browser starts to break the illusion a bit. There are about 5 or 6 fairly populated servers with all the filters turned off, and below that it just kind of slowly drops off. I scrolled through the entire server browser and I got a measure about how many people popped up on it, and after adding up all the servers I got about 220 players. This is a hell of a lot lower than the current 50,000 range that the stat is at. And this was, like I said before, with all of the filters removed, so this was getting me all of the game servers in this number. Now, honestly, I'm not trying to claim that this 210 is 100% accurate to the entire Crab Game player count. I believe it's a fair bit higher than 220. I know server browsers are infamous for being a bit buggy and just not including every server, so that's why I think it's higher. But I really do feel like this just indicates the general feel of things and how it's going on in Crab Game. So 220 is about 0.44% 50,000, which is, as I said before, a hell of a lot lower. And if there were really 50k people on Crab Game right now, I would expect to see more than 0.44% on the server browser, even though those things are pretty crappy. And I get that there's the case that some people might be AFK or just in their inventory or some shit in the menu, but I don't think there really is an argument that could explain this number. I get that Crab Game is a free game, it's gonna be netting a lot of people, but really nothing could debunk the fact that while the chart says there's 50,000 people on, there are only a few hundred people finding in the server browser, and that shit does not add up. Thankfully, this time around, the cause of the botting was pretty easy to identify. Remember those updates I told you about earlier? Well, one of them ended up being a cosmetic update, and this was towards the end of things. So, this update allowed players to get crates by just playing the game, and then they could unbox those crates into items, which they could sell on the Steam Community Market. Now, this works like CS2's system, or TF2's if you've ever played those, pretty cut and dry. But what this also had an unintended side effect of was giving botters a profit incentive, like with those other games as well. So now anyone could exploit the game's free-to-enter Steam Market economy by just making as many accounts as they could and just running them on the game to get as many items and as much money as possible. So the botters are actually trying to profit off Crab Game here, and that's why there's so many bots on this game. This would also partially explain why there are so many botters botting this game, and help confirm that theory a little bit, because people tend to come to the money and where it is. So in conclusion, Crab Game is definitely botted, but with the smaller player base still intact. The reason behind the botting is definitely to exploit the game's economy, and that's all I really wanted to say. You now know why Crab Game is botted.